Well, good morning. Thank you for sharing part of your day with us. I'm Vince Kamsky. I'm a partner at Edwards, England, Plummer and Dodge here in New York. And I'll introduce our distinguished panelists shortly. After 9/11, President Bush authorized the use of unmanned aerial vehicles to target and kill Al-Qaeda and Taliban leaders. He did this pursuant to the congressional authorization for the use of military force, and he designated the combat zone as Afghanistan and the airspace above. The U.S. has held strikes in other countries. This unmanned aerial vehicles are commonly referred to as drones, and if you're going to be more precise, either predators or reapers. This subject first received widespread attention in November 2002 when a CIA strike took out the mastermind, let me say alleged mastermind, of the attack on the USS Cole, that was a strike in Yemen. The UN Special Reporter on Extrajudicial Executions called it a clear case of extrajudicial killing. The U.S. defended it as being consistent with the law of armed conflict. And the law of armed conflict is sometimes known as the International Humanitarian Law, IHL, people may slip into that, or more colloquially as war law of war. Now, President Obama has dramatically expanded what's come to be known as the drone program. CIA Director Leon Panetta called it the only game in town in terms of disrupting Al-Qaeda leadership. The U.S. government numbers are that this year more than 400 militants have been killed and fewer than 10 non-militant casualties have occurred. Peter Berger, the Center for New American, has a different set of numbers. He thinks this year about 8% of the casualties are non-militants, and in the previous 5-year period it was 28%. Both supporters and opponents of the program have urged the Obama administration to articulate a legal justification. And the administration did so in March of this year in interesting circumstances. I'm not in the legal academy, I'm a practitioner, but watching it was interesting because many of you in the room will know and publicly revere Harold Coe. Harold Coe is a leading international law professor who was dean of Yale Law School. He was given the task of laying out the legal justification at the annual meeting of the American Society of International Law, and many of you may have been present for that. In his speech, Mr. Coe said that it is the considered view of this administration that U.S. targeting practices, including lethal operations conducted with the use of unmanned aerial vehicles, comply with all applicable law, including the law of war. He offered several justifications, said enemy leaders are legitimate targets because they're belligerent members of an enemy group at war with the U.S. He said that drones are appropriate instruments as long as they comply with the law of war, which we do by applying the principles of distinction and proportionality. He said that enemy targets are selected through robust procedures which require no extra legal practice, no extra legal process, and the killings are not unlawful extrajudicial killings. And he said that using drones to target high-level belligerents does not violate the domestic law banning assassinations. He also likely, I thought, added another important potential legal justification, and that's, in addition to the law of war, the inherent right of self-defense that exists under customary international law. It's interesting because the legal academy, to use a term of art, went ballistic. Blogs were ablaze. I think it was a peer review or someone wrote something like, this is an example of why no professor should ever go into government. There was an intervention recently when it's been revealed that the target list includes an American-born Yemeni cleric, Anwar al-Awlaki. He He's an American citizen, original birth. He's based in Yemen. He's a leader in Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. And he's been linked to the Fort Hood shooter and the would-be Christmas Day bomber. Last August, the ACLU and the Center for Constitutional Rights filed a lawsuit on behalf of Awlaki's father, seeking an injunction against strikes against Awlaki on due process grounds, and they also took on the law of war and self-defense challenges. One of the things that's interesting in this to me is the emergence of a disconnect between the American public and the government on the one side and the academy on the other. I think there's really widespread acceptance in the government and in the public. Even the New York Times' last editorial on the subject, as I read it, was sort of on board with the program with one exception, and that would be if an American citizen was targeted, there should be a more robust judicial process. So all of this raises several interesting questions on the U.S. government's policy, and we have two. It's really my dream panel for people to discuss this with you, two of the leading voices, rather than views. Muriel on my left. Muriel McConnell holds the Robert and Mary Chair of Law and is a research professor of international dispute resolution at the University of Notre Dame. She's a specialist in the international law of armed conflict and is the author of numerous books and articles on the subject. I promise I would hold up her newest one, I offered to. The Power and Purpose of International Law. See it on the Oxford University Press table out there. She's been a professional military educator at the U.S. Department of Defense, and she currently chairs the Use of Force Committee of the International Law Association, and she's a vice president of the American Society of International Law. On my right, Ben Wittes. Ben is a former Washington Post editorial writer. He is the author and editor of several books on national security issues, including Law and the Long War, which I recommend to anybody who's concerned about these issues. He's now a senior fellow and research director at Brookings, and a member of the Hoover Institute's Task Force on National Security and Law. A little while ago, it was a couple of months, Ben became the co-creator of a blog that's become sort of must reading for the national security community. His co-creators are Professor Jack Goldsmith up at Harvard and Professor Bobby Chesney at Texas. It's called Lawfare. So I recommend that. So we're going to do a little different format today. Rather than doing presentations, we're going to try to have a discussion based on a series of questions that will be fairly granular, sort of the who, where, and by whom, as well as broad questions. So I'd like to, and Gabe and Zard actually, they're writing orders, so everyone wants to jump in. Let me just ask the first question this way. Under the applicable legal regime, who may be targeted?
We just go by alphabetical order, is that right? It's rare for an O'Connell to be first in the alphabetical order, so
it's not rare for a Wittes to be last.
Thank you, if I could have my moment. We could do reverse alphabetical order next. Okay, who may be targeted? Targeting with the intent to kill an individual is only lawful under international humanitarian law or LOAC within armed conflict hostilities, and then only members of regular armed forces, members of organized armed groups, or direct participants in those hostilities. An excellent statement of who may lawfully be intentionally targeted, and note, never by police in peacetime, but Philip Alston's May 2010 report to the United Nations Human Rights Council is an excellent summary of the law on this question. Today, the United States is only engaged in armed conflict in Afghanistan. Targeted killing elsewhere is not commensurate with the law. And let me just add to Vince's introduction, he gave the impression that this situation of targeted killing by the United States outside of the armed conflict hostilities in Afghanistan is somehow accepted by the public. I would debate that. Yes, there was a very unfortunate op-ed in the New York Times, poorly informed as to the relevant international law involved. But in addition to many of us in this country who are very concerned about the government's pursuit of individuals to kill them wherever they are, regardless of the situation they're involved in, around the world there is almost unanimous support for the rules that I just stated. I want to quote somebody who I frequently debate on these questions, Kenneth Anderson of American University. I can't disagree with his conclusion that a strategic centerpiece of U.S. counterterrorism policy rests upon legal grounds regarded as deeply illegal by large and influential parts of the international community.